What's up, Star Wars Rebels fans? Welcome to the Star Wars Rebels After Show here on AfterBuzz TV, Season 3, Episode 15, maybe? Trials of the Darksaber. We'll be breaking down the episode and talking about our thoughts and predictions for the future in just a moment.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Hey guys.
Oh my God.
What even was this episode?
Listen, I'm in the midst of doing the Yuri on Ice after show right now. We have our last episode tomorrow, and we're talking about episodes 9 and 10, which I have, or episodes 11 and 12 rather, which I've not been able to emotionally prepare myself to rewatch yet.
Oh my gosh.
But I was like, okay, today I'm gonna watch Star Wars Rebels, and literally it's just me sobbing for the last 5 minutes, ugly crying, need a box of tissues. My cats are confused about what's wrong with me. Holy moly, it was so good.
And we were working our way through Voltron and, emotionally compromised because Voltron, okay, we need to stop, we need to watch Rebels.
Do you ever have one of those moments where all of a sudden you're talking to a friend and then all of a sudden that friend finally opens up and it's just the floodgate of emotion that's been building up for years and years?
I mean, that was the thing, I think for me it's I knew it was going to go somewhere, and we were definitely going to get a little bit of Sabine backstory, and ultimately we didn't even really get too many specific details.
I don't think we needed them.
No, you really didn't. And obviously it's something that's going to come into effect in a later episode, perhaps the next one, because it's called The Legacy of Mandalore or something like that. Anyway, guys, here we are on the Star Wars Rebels After Show at AfterBuzz TV. If you guys have not done so already, please be sure to go on over to iTunes and subscribe. That way you can take us with you on the go and, listen to us gush about Star Wars Rebels while you're working on your art projects or walking your dog or driving to work or mowing your lawn.
I think I'm going to read that review now because it has to do with that.
Oh!
We have Too Funny for Work from Prodigal 358.
Aww.
So I was listening to your last episode on my lunch break, and when you started talking about Agent Callus doing PSA / his own radio show / the lunch menu, I lost it and started belly laughing as loud as I could. When I calmed down, I realized I was in the middle of my break room with a bunch of my coworkers staring at me. Totally worth it. Thank you, Prodigal, for leaving a review.
Yes. And if you do leave reviews, we will give you shout outs on the show, as you just heard, because, again, an absolutely genius, the person before that leaving a review that simply said nice things, because we like it when you say nice things about us.
And it keeps us on the air.
It does. It lets our producers know that, hey, people like listening to this podcast about Star Wars Rebels. I don't know why you wouldn't like listening to a podcast about Star Wars Rebels. It's amazing.
And it bumps our position on the iTunes charts.
It does, so that when you look up Star Wars in the podcast section of the iTunes store, we're a higher result if you keep leaving those reviews and whatnot, and at least rating us there. And again, if you are not a US iTunes user, we will not see your reviews. So if you do leave us a review, just screen cap it and send it our way on Twitter, preferably using that hashtag ABTVRebels, which we are following along with throughout the show, throughout the week, etc., etc.
Same as if you review the podcast on Google Music.
Yes.
Yeah, those all count. They absolutely do count.
Yes. But again, we won't see them. So send them our way. Use that hashtag ABTVRebels. If you are listening on iTunes, remember you can also watch us on YouTube, where we do stream live on Sundays at 8 o'clock p.m. Pacific time. We have people watching us live right now, so we are following along with that chat.
Patrick Peretta says it's his first time in chat.
Oh, yay. Hi, Patrick. Patrick tweets at me a lot of the times and Instagram comments, so it's nice to have you here with us for real this time. So you can also, again, use that hashtag ABTVRebels, and we'll hear what all of your thoughts are on the episode while we share all of our thoughts. But enough about that. I'm going to introduce my panel. We got Katie Cullen in the house.
Hi, all my buddies. You can find me on Twitter at Kiaxet. That is Kiaxet.
Megan Salinas.
Hey guys, you can tweet at me at the Menguin. That's TheMenguin.
Joelle, unfortunately, has been struck by a flu, but she is Joelle Monique everywhere on all the social media, so you should totally find her there. And I'm Emma Fyffe, who can be found all over the internet at my name, Emma Fyffe. So, obviously, we had some, pretty great feelings about this episode.
So ugly crying, yes.
Agony, sobbing, yelling things,
Yeah.
scaring the cat.
But what a great
Oh my God,
episode.
just unbelievably solid from start to finish for me. It was one of those things where it started off with, so obviously we've got the Darksaber. We get a little bit of the backstory of the Darksaber through some conversations between like Kanan and Fen Rao.
And shadow puppetry,
And
which I love when they
yes.
do backstory with shadow stuff. Now,
it's-
I know Harry Potter made it popular, but I love it.
Yeah.
I maintain it was way cool before Harry Potter did it.
It was
Yeah.
cool before Harry Potter did it, but Harry Potter was the one that kind of brought it up and went, hey, look at the awesome stuff we can do with this art style. And everyone went,
Yeah, yeah.
The
And now it's everywhere.
The shadow puppet animation style is always something I am very partial to.
Yes, I am very partial to it as
Oh,
well.
yeah, I love it.
I blame a lot of it on my absurd love for Revolutionary Girl Utena, which has shadow puppets in every single episode. And it's
Oh, God, the
amazing.
gossip puppets.
It's so
Oh
good.
my gosh.
I remember those.
Yep.
I need to watch this.
Yes,
season.
and I do. I love it when flashbacks are told using shadow puppets or any sort of like fantasy sequence to explain
Story.
something. Yeah.
Different art styles.
Yeah,
Change
yeah.
the art style on me and make it work, and I will love you forever.
In the same way that a lot of 3D animated movies will do 2D
A 2D animated sequence,
yeah.
exactly. Or like
Or
an
even
animatic.
now,
Yeah.
a live action movie will do a 3D animated flashback.
Yeah.
Looking at you, Krampus. But yeah, this whole thing about like her, like what a great like preamble to everything else that we get in the rest of the episode, because we know Sabine has always been a valuable member of the
She has. I mean, she's such a great character. But I will admit that in the beginning, in the first season of the show, she was definitely like the cool Mandalorian chick with the explosives. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Nothing against her. She was a super cool character. Right off the bat, she started having some really great team ups with Hera, and I always love it when we get to see two women work together.
Exactly.
And she's always had a very strong and interesting relationship with Hera, which we certainly saw shades of in this episode, which was actually
Yeah.
one of my favorite things about the episode.
Yeah.
And then last season, like we started getting a little more of her backstory because Fen Rao showed up. We got a little bit of the like, she was Clan Vizsla for whatever reason. Like her mom is still on the planet. Things are not great there. Shocking. Not really.
Yeah, and then in this season, we've been getting a little bit more,
Yeah.
piece by piece. But even so, as her backstory has been revealed to us, we still didn't really know that much about her as a person. Yeah, it like we would find out that she went to the to the academy for a while. Oh, she's distanced from her family. Like those are all bits and pieces that we gathered as time went on. But personality-wise, she has always been the cool Mandalorian chick with
Yeah.
with the art and the explosives, and that's just been how we know her. And every now and then it would be cool when a character like a former bounty hunter would come into
Right,
the
exactly.
situation, but it's never been anything that she couldn't handle
Yeah.
or a challenge that she couldn't overcome.
Definitely not. Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like Sabine, we're sort of finding out, is this character with this very, as many of the rebels are, this very multifaceted past, where obviously part of it is her past of like what went down when she actually was living on Mandalore, and then there is that sort of gray area of the time between she left Mandalore and now we understand a little bit about why she left, and the time that she presumably was working with Ketsu Onyo before, as basically a bounty hunter, before she ended up with the crew of the Ghost.
Yeah,
So-
exactly.
I think my favorite line from this was one of the talks with Mom and Dad. Remember how long it took her to trust us. Just like, that says so much with like 6 words.
Which is amazing considering like how much of the odd man out Ezra was at the very start.
Absolutely.
And how much of a tight-knit team, the crew was
Right.
when he was brought into the fold. So
Yeah.
But
like,
Ezra really, really wanted in. He wanted to learn. He wanted to be part of this. He was in it to win it from the get-go. Doesn't sound like she was.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's interesting because even though, yes, she obviously is part of the team and she's part of the rebellion and she has accepted that. I mean, to the point that when, Fen Rao and Kanan and Hera are all sort of like, well, if you could get your family to like get on board with this, with the rebellion basically. And she's like, I have a family. This is my family. don't need anything to do with any of those people that I left behind.
Because the last time she tried that, they sided with the
I
Empire.
know, they threw her under the bus completely. Yeah.
And,
So
and it kind of like learning the things that we learn about her in this episode too, it explains a lot of why she is probably such a talented artist, because she's internalized a lot of this stuff.
Yes.
And doesn't even talk about it with the ghost crew.
Yeah.
And that's how she expresses herself.
Yeah, I loved when Kanan and Hera were talking on the comm links basically about Sabine and how Kanan's like, oh, it's so frustrating because like she's so expressive, but like she's so closed off, and Hera's like, she's so Mandalorian.
Yes! It's basically dad going, I don't understand my teenage daughter.
Yeah, well, because it is true, and I liked that was sort of the way that they were characterizing the Mandalorian people as these people who are, you know, they have very loud personalities and they are like very, very open and expressive, but they're actually like suppressing all the not so great emotions.
Yeah, it's all
Here's
about
the loud
pride and
part.
the honor.
Don't look beyond it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, which is just something that I feel like like that conversation was like, oh my God, like I'm not a teenager anymore. And obviously it was worse when I was a teenager, but I was also worse at suppressing the not so nice emotions when I was a teenager. And like as an adult, I'm like, oh God, that is
that
me.
wall I built up.
Yep, I'm so open and expressive, but man, have I built up a wall in there.
Oh no, it's coming down.
So what you're saying is we need to get you a Darksaber and have a heart to heart.
Yeah.
But the oh my goodness, too. For a good while for this episode, I was kind of thinking that the reason, and I'm glad they didn't go this route, but there was part of me because in a lot of kids shows, especially ones that we grew up with, whenever you know, a female character would be undergoing sort of a training sequence like this, the reason the kid gloves would come on would be because she's a girl. And like the learning the lesson, oh, maybe I shouldn't go easy on her just because she's a girl is like part of the moral.
Right.
That was never an option.
I like that this had absolutely nothing to do with that. It's way more layered.
It's way more layered than that. And again, I loved that of all of the people involved in this, like, I think a huge portion of the deciding factor for Sabine going, okay, I'm going to learn to do this is the fact that Hera entreated her to, basically. Because basically Fen Rao is like, yeah, I mean, if she could learn to wield the Darksaber, then like Mandalore might rally behind her. And Kanan's like, really, you want an army of Mandalorians? He's like, yeah, an army of Mandalorians led by Sabine, who is absolutely loyal to the rebel cause. I mean, you know, to the point that she is calling the crew of the Ghost her family, which they absolutely are. And so you have Kanan and Fen Rao being like, you need to do this thing, and Hera being like, what, are you sure? And then Hera thinks about it and basically says to Sabine, you know, listen, I understand what it's like to have a rough family history. Trust me, I get it. And obviously Sabine knows that to absolutely be true. She has seen Hera interact with her father, with whom she has a strained relationship. And then she says to her, you know, but if you're able to do this, it's going to make such a huge difference for us.
Yeah, now could you imagine the rebellion with all of Mandalore
I
on their
know.
side?
That's-
Led by Sabine?
I know.
I just love we have to ask you to do this. We will respect your
Yes.
decision.
Yes.
Yes.
There was
Have
no,
to say
you
yes.
must, you must, you must.
No, no.
There was, this would be really super helpful, but if you don't want to do the thing,
We can't
gotcha.
force you. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was great too. And talking about Hera and Sabine's relationship in this episode, Hera just had so many wonderful expressions. Again, because she does understand. She has that wonderful sense of empathy anyway, but literally having gone through something very similar, you know, she understands better than Ezra and better than Kanan ever could. And I like the fact that she kind of guided Kanan to the right way to go about
she
teaching
absolutely
her
did.
without having to go down there herself and be like, boys, I'm going to tell you what's what. No, it was completely different.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the things that is so strong about Hera as a character is she is very much that sort of mentor, nurturer figure. I mean, she comes by it much more naturally than Kanan does.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, you know, this whole crew is full of people who are trying to run away from what they were. And Hera is mature enough to accept the fact that the only reason she didn't want Chum Syndulla and the other Twi'leks to get involved was personal. And she sees that in Sabine as well, where it's like, she's been hurt by her family to the point that she's very vague about why she really split with Mandalore, which, you know, is a big indicator that there's something that went down that she doesn't want to talk about. And Hera's very respectful of that. But she also, you know, is dealing with Kanan in a mentor sort of figure for both Ezra and for Sabine as someone who also was trying to completely run away from what he was.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, for years and years. And yeah, there's something to be said, too, for her being closed off to the point where she really didn't want to accept the burden. And that was one of the things that made the initial training stuff so difficult and so jarring.
Well, and you add into that Kanan has taught exactly one person, and Ezra is very much not without his issues.
No.
And obviously what's going to work for Ezra is not going to work for Sabine.
Exactly.
And Kanan doesn't really have any other Jedi where he can just kind of call him up and be like, I'm having trouble. Can
Yeah.
What do you do with your students?
How did this, that's all gone.
Yeah.
So he doesn't quite know how to approach her in the same way that Hera does. And we have that very big gap between people who get it with family trouble and people who don't.
Yeah.
And we really got that from Ezra with well, at least you have parents. Like,
Yeah.
whoa, sit down.
I know, but
sit down.
But at the same time, when he said that to her, I still felt terrible for him. You know what I mean? Because
you can feel bad for him, but it's still the wrong card to pull.
no, I don't think he should have said it, of
No.
course. But, you know, but to me, again, like, that's one of the things that I really like about this show is, like, that was so realistic in terms of what a teenage boy would say. What any teenager would say. Let's not make it specifically male.
Yeah,
but
no, not even necessarily teenager. Anybody who had recently lost their parents,
Right.
talking with somebody who has a strained relationship with theirs.
Right.
That's a very human reaction.
Yeah, and who was also feeling frustrated, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the thing is that, and I also really liked that Ezra was so on board with the fact that Sabine could do this. You know what I mean?
He was into it. It wasn't like, oh, well, I know this, so I'll teach you.
No.
It's like, okay, let's do the thing. And he was actually good with working with her.
He was. He was like, cool, let me help you.
And didn't try to lord it over her
Not
too
at
much.
all.
Once
Not
we
at
got
all.
past the initial,
I was gonna say
sit.
he lorded it over her a little bit when they were
But
first
he
starting,
got
and that
past
annoyed
it.
me a little bit.
He
but
got past it very quickly,
Yeah.
though, especially for Ezra.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Especially for a character who we've, you know, historically seen to be incredibly stubborn. I thought that Ezra handled this very gracefully, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And the other thing I liked was that, you know, again, Ezra in some ways was actually better at working with Sabine than Kanan was, because Sabine went into this being resistant to it, and the way that she was being resistant to it was basically by being like, no, I already know how to fight. Whereas Ezra came into it being like, cool, I'm force sensitive. I don't know anything about being a Jedi. And I mean, he's stubborn in his own way and like resistant to certain things, but he was willing to learn in a way that Sabine was not. And I like that it manifested as, I already know everything.
And it's also the force sensitive thing. Because again, Kanan doesn't know how to handle that
No.
in a student. Like, she's not force sensitive. I worry that she will hurt herself, and I don't.
Right. Which he never like really says out loud, but Hera does call him out on. And she's like, are you having her train with, you know, those sticks that you and Zeb cut up because, you know, you're afraid that she needs to learn, or you're afraid that she can't handle the lightsaber, not because she hasn't learned how to fight with a blade, but because she's not a Jedi.
And talking about, like, again, the difference between the two of them, she's so closed off. Ezra, as he points out, is almost too willing to learn, and that's why he's in such a danger of tipping over to the dark side.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, exactly. So that's why he's like so receptive to like, oh, well, like, I could learn something else from this person. Like Darth Maul. Great choice.
Knowledge is power.
I'm sorry,
power
not Darth
corrupts.
Maul. It's just Maul. It's not Darth anymore.
Knowledge is
The
power.
artist-
Power corrupts. Study hard, be evil.
Yep.
The artist formerly known as Darth Maul.
Yeah, the artist formerly known as Darth Maul.
So, do we think that Sabine went and had a chat with Tom Baker at some point?
Well, I don't know. She
that
seemed to have
looked
disturbed
like
the
it.
Bendu. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we didn't get a conversation between the two of them. She doesn't bring it up. We just see him being stirred, awake, and then she eventually comes back after that. And we don't know if a conversation got left on the cutting room floor, or if we were never meant to know. We don't know.
Yeah.
Do we think that Kanan chose this area because it was Bendu territory? He was kind of hoping.
I don't know. It seemed to me that this is the thing is, I think that Kanan did go out there with the best of intentions. You know what I mean? Like he
What
really
they say about the road to hell.
Yeah, he really went out there expecting to, not really knowing what to expect, but wanting to do the best he could. I mean, especially because I think, and one of the things that was really nice about this episode was all of the communication between Hera and Kanan, that we haven't been getting too many Kanan and Hera moments as of late. So it was really nice to see them sort of like having a conversation as, for lack of a better metaphor, mom and dad. You know what I mean?
It really was good to have mom and dad talking about the kids.
Yeah.
Because everyone is trying to help. And
Yeah.
everyone is trying, but they're all on completely different wavelengths and they wind up clashing more than anything else.
Yeah.
And it's Hera that's trying to get them all together and be like, no, okay, just think about it this way. And it's not about you.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, because ultimately it was about Sabine, and yes, she is not a Jedi, so when she is wielding this saber, again, and Fen Rao even says, he's like, she doesn't have to become, like, great with it. She just has to be proficient enough to basically carry it as a symbol.
Well,
Yeah.
and the other thing, too, is that, again, like, she doesn't have to fight like the Jedi fight. She gets, she gets her own equipment upgrade, and he's like, fight like a Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Take that guy down a peg.
Yeah. Yeah, because she gets the van braces from Fen Rao, who brings them to her basically as like an apology gift, because he's like, well, you're partially in this mess because of me. And she's like, partially?
100% you.
It's 100% your fault. Because you were the one that was like, yeah, the Darksaber, it was Tar Vizsla's saber, and he was the first Mandalorian to ever be identified as a Jedi, and then they put it in the Jedi Temple, and then the Mandalorians during the War for Mandalore were like, yo, we're going to steal that back. And so they did. And then Darth Maul took it. It was terrible.
In another coup.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because Pre Vizsla.
Politics, man.
Because Pre Vizsla had it, and then Darth Maul killed him, and he took the Darksaber, and then we found it on Dathomir, and so the Darksaber's like been through some stuff at this point.
And I love the idea that this, this relic from Mandalorian culture has so much respect by, like, everybody on the planet respects it a lot. So it's really cool to think that, like, this, even though she doesn't want this burden necessarily, that something of such importance has fallen into her lap, and it's her responsibility to learn how to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because as you say, it's like, again, it's just a symbol, because it's a symbol, but also needs to become part of the Mandalorian arsenal, because a Mandalorian is not going to fight like a Jedi, though I did love when Sabine was fighting Kanan and she tried to use the van bracers the first time and she failed miserably, and he was like, hey, might I remind you that the Jedi won the Jedi Mandalorian War? And it was like, oh snap.
History lesson. It was a very good point about,
It was.
Look, you gotta do both.
Yeah.
You can't just fall back on one and expect that it's gonna work. It doesn't.
No, absolutely. So yeah, and that battle, and he finally did allow her to use the Darksaber, because they were just fighting, with those
the
wooden
sticks,
training sticks. So when he did finally allow her to use the Darksaber, like, all of a sudden it became real, because like by not letting her even wield the Darksaber, it's like she didn't want it in the first place because she doesn't want the responsibilities that come with it.
Yeah.
So it was easy to be like, oh no, I know best, and I already know how to fight.
Just sticks. It's fine.
Yeah. But as soon as the Darksaber was actually in her hand, it's like, okay, now you have to sort of like deal with what this means more so than what this just is.
Yeah, and there's a level of mutual respect there too.
Yes.
By giving her that as well, because when she's practicing with the sticks, it's like, okay, Ezra will show you the basics. Like,
Right,
I
yeah.
can't even be bothered.
Well, and
with
on top of that, it's like, okay, so you're not giving her the Darksaber, which basically implies, from her point of view, as somebody who already is hesitant to take on the responsibilities of being the wielder of it, she basically is in a position of, okay, so you don't trust me that I can handle it, like I will physically harm myself because I don't know how to use it, and also I can't handle the responsibilities that come with it. So in his handing it over to her, it's like, no, I trust you to really learn to use this specifically.
I will say that when you are starting out with a weapon, you use a dummy weapon to learn forms.
That is
no.
absolutely true.
Of course.
You don't.
But you're not
On
already.
one hand, point. On the other hand, counterpoint.
Well, again, ideally, if you're using, if you're only just now learning how to use a weapon, this is probably the first weapon you're learning how to use. Yes, absolutely, use the
Right.
dummy sticks, but
Right.
she is a skilled fighter.
She is,
But
yeah.
she's also using a different weapon and learning forms of a particular style in a particular school.
Which ended up being something
What
that
they
was
needed.
important in
Yeah.
in the latter part of the episode when she was fighting with Kanan. And so, you know, first he's just like block high, block low, block mid, and he's like, okay, now we're gonna go through that step sequence that Ezra taught you, which is when it started to get a little intense.
Real. It got real.
They got
so
really quick.
It did. It got real fast.
And it did so organically too.
The pacing of this episode was just so good.
Yeah, as the steps increased, as the counting increased, the music swells and the cuts swell. You know, they became quicker,
Yeah.
and the emotional dialogue got more and more intense. It was a very, very well executed build up, and like it's kind of like when a symphony is like building up to a crescendo.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was like.
Yeah, and I mean, and she basically like ended up falling at one point, and that was when Kanan kind of called her out, being like, you have to use everything in your arsenal to succeed. I don't expect you to be a Jedi. I expect you to be a competent fighter who also fights with this blade, which was amazing. And again, like, and I loved that was sort of the lesson rather than like, oh, she can't handle this because she's a girl. It's like she
Yeah.
can't handle it because she's not force sensitive, but actually she can. Like, anyone can fight with a lightsaber.
Yeah.
It's just that, you know, the Jedi are the ones who are most inclined to do so and capable of handling what is really, as Kanan was explaining, like just, it's just energy.
It's an energy flow.
Yeah.
I love the little tutorial on this is how a lightsaber works.
Yeah.
This is kind of how it functions. Do you feel this? There's pull, there's this. Okay, now we're going to do this. Like,
Yeah.
it's not your normal blade, but that doesn't mean you can't do the
And
thing.
I love that it became lighter as they continued to fight.
Yeah. And and when she used the lasso on the vamp
get it
racers to
back.
get the Darksaber back when she like got back in the game, and then when it started to get like really intense, it was, oh my god. So basically, she's fighting with Kanan, and he's, you know, sort of goading her, and in a way that I was like, oh, okay, this is getting a little rough, Kanan. You might want to like
Ease up on the gas a little
dial
bit.
it back a notch, but it ended up being the right thing to do because he got through to her, and she basically admitted that she didn't really leave Mandalore so much by choice as she was kind of banished because she like stood up for her family and against the Empire.
Because while she was with the Empire, they were having her build weapons that they were using on Mandalore, on her people.
Right, to defeat and ultimately kind of enslave them.
Our explosive expert, you like creating things for the Empire to use against her friends and family, who she went to the Empire to work for to protect anyway. Like, that is the, oh my gosh.
I feel
yeah.
like she and Galen Erso need to like get together.
Yeah.
Because he's still alive at this point, you guys. Spoilers for Rogue One.
just have a nice,
it's been a month.
heartbreaking heart-to-heart chat.
Yeah. God, I would love to see that conversation, actually. I think that would be a really interesting encounter.
Could you imagine if anybody in our Rebels crew got to actually talk to Galen Erso for about 10 minutes?
Seriously.
We certainly have enough people calling for them to talk to Cassian.
Yeah, I would love to see Captain Cassian show up at some point in Rebels. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. Saw Gerrera, of course, was kind of the number one choice because he actually was a Clone Wars character that was carried over into Rogue One.
And he's like, he was such an integral part of like a facet of the rebellion.
Well, the sort of beginning of the rebellion and all the individual rebel cells, which is basically where we are right now, ultimately slowly but surely coming together to form the Rebel Alliance. So anyway, but yeah, so she's in this battle with Kanan and it basically confesses like, I had to do all these terrible things when I was working for the Empire, basically. So I then like took a stand against them for my family, and they didn't stand with me. No. They chose the Empire.
They were just like, have fun with that, sweetie.
Yeah.
You should leave.
No, like, and here's where we talk about the vagueness of it, because like, we know exactly, emotionally speaking, what happened, but how did the moment actually go down?
I'm not sure we need to see that.
No, we
honestly.
don't necessarily. No, we don't need it. Well, I mean, we get the gist of it right here. But yeah, as soon as she gets a family reunion that I'm sure we'll get somewhere down the line, it's gonna be terrible.
I just loved. I know it's not what you want to hear, but I would follow you.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's like,
Yeah.
Oh, and the rest of your family will support you too. Oh.
Yeah. Fen Rao, man.
I'm just gonna lie here and die. Don't mind me.
I never anticipated to, because I liked Fen Rao. Like, when we first got introduced to him, I'm like, you're a bad guy I can respect.
Right.
But, like, I never thought that we'd get, like, this sort of emotional moment with him.
Well, Rebels is good at this. I mean,
It's
look
true.
at Gallus.
Yeah.
I'd rather not.
I mean, and Fen Rao too
too busy reading
was
the lunch
another
menu.
person that came from like such an interesting, like a storyline you don't necessarily expect to see in something that's a kids show,
kids.
so to speak, where it's like he was sort of the leader of the Mandalorian colony, Conquer Dawn, and then they all got killed. Yay!
Yeah, he doesn't have a family anymore.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're in the middle of a war.
It's rough. It's so rough.
Kids' cartoons that talk about war and know that they're about war and don't shy away from it can do some really, really good things.
Yeah, I mean, and this episode for me, just the pacing was so good. It hit all of those emotional beats. We saw some nice maturity on the part of Ezra that we don't always get to see.
Yeah.
I mean, this strong contender for my favorite episode, for sure.
It's
Chopper purring like a cat. I think this makes Zeb the only person on the crew that can't understand him.
Oh, Chopper?
Yeah. It looks like everyone else can.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
you've
just-
always gotten the impression
Chopper.
that Sabine could understand him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even, especially great growth from Kanan, too.
Yes.
Because we
Oh
saw
my
at the very
God.
beginning of the series, he was struggling so much with the idea of being a teacher because he never properly finished his training.
Correct.
And we saw it a lot at the beginning of this season, too. Like, I don't know how to reconnect with my Padawan. I don't know what to do in this sort of situation. I don't know how to teach now. And we see that here. Ezra's the only student he's ever, taken on, and so having another one who learns completely differently, who doesn't use the Force or doesn't have the Force to fall back on.
Right.
Like, he doesn't know how to deal with that. And so he goes about it in not the best way until the very end.
Yeah.
Everyone has hang-ups.
Yeah, it's true. But again, it is nice to see him being so willing to jump into the teaching role. I mean, it's like, they're like, oh, she needs to learn how to use the Darksaber, and he's like, all right, well, guess we're gonna go on a little training retreat.
We're gonna go camping, kids.
Yeah.
In the middle of the desert. It'll be great with the spiders.
Yeah, so that I don't get it, so nobody gets hurt. But yeah,
Sure.
it was great. I can't think of any other things I want to bring up about this episode.
I think we're all just kind of lying here and crying.
Yeah,
That's basically it.
It was a very emotionally satisfying / draining episode of Star Wars Rebels to watch.
Yeah.
Great character growth, great pacing, great dialogue.
Yeah.
We were talking about. Yeah.
I think the dialogue on this particular episode is the best it's been. Mm-hmm. Full stop.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And again, and I mentioned at the top of the episode, like with this episode in particular, we've now completely moved Sabine into the territory of well-developed,
Yes.
interesting character who happens to be a woman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's like, she's always been a great character. Like, she's been a super fun character.
A woman of color.
Yes, exactly.
absolutely.
And we started to again see some development from her last season, and now we're like really getting some good juicy backstory, which obviously we're probably going to be getting in the next episode as well. I assume, you know, kind of part 2 of this is, okay, I've accepted my responsibility. Time to go to Mandalore.
Hi, Mom.
Yay! Yeah. Which it's interesting because, okay, so at sort of the end, sort of the fall of the new Mandalorian regime, which, you know, Duchess Satine was in charge of, and then with Darth Maul moving in there for a little while and then ultimately being killed by the Emperor, or having his brother killed by the Emperor, rather.
And then he
getting
went
wrecked.
away.
And
We don't know what happened to him between getting recaptured
Right.
by the Emperor and ending up on that planet. You know,
Right.
Yeah,
It's in the Darth Maul comics,
kinda-
but yeah, he did. I mean, they basically Clone Wars was canceled.
That's right. He was
before-
rescued by the other Mandalorian, who's now
Gar Saxon.
That's
yes.
the guy.
So basically, yeah. So
Thank you.
so yeah, Darth Maul, like, he was supposed to have this other storyline that Gar Saxon was supposed to be introduced in. They ended up covering it in one of the Darth Maul comics. But again, ultimately, it's like what happened on Mandalore. It was definitely
Stays on Mandalore.
It was it was definitely in a state of chaos. Let's put it that way. So it's interesting because it then brings up the question of, like, because I know some people sort of theorize that Bo-Katan might be Sabine's mom, but I feel like she isn't because of Sabine saying that her family threw her under the bus.
Like, you feel like
She wouldn't have done that.
No.
would have been more loyal.
Absolutely. Yeah. I 100% think that we might see her. I hope that we see her again. I feel like maybe
think she'd
she's
still be a
definitely showing
player.
up again. Yeah.
Well, and given what we knew about her when Darth Maul, you know, had his little coup of their
Right,
planet,
right.
she was. I mean, maybe, and this is just like the fire of resistance getting dulled as you get
Yeah,
older.
yeah.
But yeah, you would think that if she was Sabine's mother,
Right.
that she would absolutely be a part of the resistance. Like,
Yeah.
she would have been the one to be like, okay, Sabine, you're not going to the, you're not going to the academy. We are going.
We're
to...
taking Mandalore back for the
Yeah.
Mandalorians.
Exactly.
Because I mean, that interestingly enough, like, that's what Pre Vizsla was all about. I mean, Pre Vizsla was not a good person, but like, he wanted to take Mandalore back from the new Mandalorians and get it back to like the old Mandalorian war is war
Ancient
and awesome.
Scotland.
Yes,
Then
way.
again,
Ancient Scotland.
she was also Duchess Satine's sister.
She was.
And when it came to her values or who she chose her loyalty to, she did pick her cause over family.
That's true.
Until the very end again. Until
I'm so
the Duchess's
I'm
life was in
so
danger.
interested.
But yeah, so it's very interesting to be like, well, okay, then if she dedicated herself to another cause, being the Empire, then it is within her character.
I know, but it just
to
feels
turn
out
her
of
back
character.
on family. Because again, you feel like she would resist the Empire.
I just don't want
like she
Starbuck to be
felt
part
a
of the
lot
Empire,
more-
guys.
Yeah. But I feel
Hashtag
like
truth.
she believed a lot more in people. Her cause, yes, but the leader of her cause specifically.
Yeah.
And then her sister.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really a people to believe in for the Empire. It's this big,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm with you. It feels out of character for her.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I don't think we're going to see that character again. I think absolutely we should see that character again. But I don't think that she's Sabine's mother.
Maybe
I did actually,
cousin, aunt.
I legit did have a moment though where I was like trying to figure out relatively how far in the future from from Clone Wars to this. It was so like in New Hope, Luke and Leia are supposed to be like
17.
17.
I thought 17, 19.
17. Betty.
Which means that like she could, I don't think this is true at all, but I'm just gonna like tell you a thought I had, which I was like, maybe she's Pre Vizsla's daughter. That would be amazing.
Oh my God.
But then she mentioned her dad, and I was like, oh no, he's dead. He's super dead.
I would imagine that she is the kid of characters we haven't met
I agree. No,
John
I totally
Favreau
agree.
lost
Not,
his head,
listen,
absolutely.
it would be a little much if all of the characters were children of major players in the Clone Wars. We already
that's the Skywalker's responsibility.
Yes, we already have Hera, so and you know her father is indeed Chum Syndulla, so it's like I think that Sabine's parents are probably original characters. So
I'd hope so. Original character, do not steal.
yes,
We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll meet them soon.
yes. Anything else in the episode you guys want to touch on, or anything of note in the chat to discuss?
Chat's talking about Clone Wars, Katie Sackhoff, all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
She's fantastic.
Evidently, Katie Sackhoff confirmed a while back that she was coming back as Bo-Katan this season.
That is what I thought. Yeah.
Link us the article on Twitter.
Yeah.
I like to verify my sources.
Yes.
Well, and also, again, that doesn't necessarily mean that she is Sabine's mother.
Right, yeah. Again.
like there could be just a familial relationship because they're a part of the same clan.
Sure.
Yeah.
As I say, it makes perfect sense for us to see that character again. I just don't think that she is Sabine's mom.
No. All in all, I think this episode gave us a lot to chew on for the next 3 weeks.
I know.
3
yeah.
weeks, yeah.
It seems
2,
like
3.
yeah.
3.
Yeah, 3 weeks. It looks like we are going to have a little mini hiatus right now. I actually was surprised how like fast the show came back after the Christmas break, because last year there was a longer break. Maybe this explains why.
Yeah.
They're pulling a CW and giving us this random spring break in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, so basically, the next episode will not be airing until February 18th. It is entitled The Legacy of Mandalore. So, as I say, most likely we're going to kind of get the next
It's
step.
gonna hurt.
It's gonna be so great.
Yeah.
More Mandalorian history.
Yeah, I mean,
Welcome back from the break. Are your feels prepared? Yep. No, they're not.
Yeah.
Oh God, they weren't.
if if this episode is any indication, we're getting into some real meaty stuff, and just ultimately seeing more of where this rebellion is gonna go.
Yeah. I love thinking, I love the idea that this show presents us with an entire, much in the same way that Rogue One did, presents us with a facet of the rebellion that like otherwise we would have never seen.
Yeah.
And, again, outside of the magical chosen space wizards, it's just, the idea that Mandalore rising up, it just makes me so happy.
Listen, you know me, I love Mandalorian. So I love them even more after that whole like, oh, they're so like tightly wound actually, even though they come across as so expressive and crazy. Okay. So I feel like we sort of covered the predictions
Everything.
territory
Yep,
and
we did.
everything. So with that, I guess we'll just start to wrap things up here and say goodbye for a few weeks. We'll be back at our usual time. So February 18th. So we'll be back February 19th at 8 o'clock p.m. Pacific time to talk about the next episode of Star Wars Rebels. In the meantime, Katie, where can the people find you?
I will actually not be there that week because I'll be at Gallifrey.
Ah.
So if you're a Doctor Who fan in LA, you know what to do. I'm Katie Cullen. You can find me on the social medias and on YouTube at Kiaxet. That is Kiaxet. I am also on Snapchat at Kia Prime. Arrow is back this week, finally. So that's Wednesdays at, I believe, 9 o'clock. Wow, Voltron is back.
Yay!
We had an episode earlier today, and we are moving to our normal slot of Thursdays at 9. Ruby, we only have a couple episodes left. We do have a show this week that is Thursday at 7. Do the thing, win the stuff.
Megan Salinas.
Hey guys, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at the Menguin. That's TheMenguin. I am also on a bunch of shows here at AfterBuzz, and I write articles for the Movie Chick. That's Chick with 2 Ks. Be sure to check those out.
And Joelle, of course, can be found at Joelle Monique and at Black Nerd Girls, where she writes and does all kinds of awesome stuff for them. So you guys should totally check all that out. I am Emma Fyffe, found all over the internet at my name, Emma Fyffe, EMMAFYFFE. I am also on a number of shows here at AfterBuzz TV. And again, if you space cartoons, you probably also like Voltron. So again, Thursdays at 9 o'clock p.m. Pacific. This week we are covering episodes 3 and 4. It's going to be a super good time. Also, if you guys like Star Wars, clearly you do. I am currently doing a show over at Hyper RPG. That is twitch.tv/hyperrpg. It is entitled Pencils and Parsecs. It is a Star Wars role-playing game using the Fantasy Flight's Edge of the Empire system. It's a really good time. You should totally come hang out with us. Again, we stream live at 9 o'clock p.m. on Friday nights. That is all Pacific time. So again, guys, we'll be back on February 19th at our usual time, 8 o'clock p.m. Pacific time, talking all about Star Wars Rebels. In the meantime, keep tweeting at us. Use that hashtag ABTVRebels, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
May the Force be with you.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.